Is it O-L-O-O-U-L? Hey guys, hello and welcome to the Road to ProRaw 9, episode 6. My name is Ben Winstone. Thank you for joining me once again. We're about halfway down and another long half to go, I think, but we're slowly making progress week by week. Thank you again for watching. As always, I appreciate it. Now, to start off this week's episode, it seems as though it's becoming a bit of a trend, I guess, to share some of the Snapchats that I've received since last week's episode. So let's not wait any longer and get stuck into it. First one is the rather generous Big Man, Big Screen. Next up is Juggernaut Porn. I'm not sure what category you find that in Pornhub. Now the next one is Time to Get Fat, featuring the Juggernaut. I think this is the same person who told me that they just sit down and eat whilst watching the episode and end up overeating because they get so engrossed watching, which is kind of gross. Made my ProRaw debut by having a Snapchat appearing on this episode, on last episode. I guess if you want to class that as a ProRaw debut, then go for it. Now this next one, Road to ProRaw 9, featuring the opinion about the top plate of a leg extension machine. You've got to be kidding me. That is pathetic. I don't understand the eggplant thing. I don't even like eggplants. What does that mean? And last but not least, Faggonaut. What the fuck? And 8 inches? Mate, they're a bit bigger than 8 inches, but unless he was talking about something. Anyway, and also, check this one out. I can finally say that this has been endorsed by the greatest of all time, Ed Cohn. Well, I mean, he didn't quite endorse it. He liked the post, but, you know, I can say as liked by Ed Cohn, I guess. But hey, that's this week's feedback, so thank you. Keep it coming. I'm starting to get a little bit worried about what I'm going to receive next week when this episode airs, but I'll try and put what I can to air, and we'll go from there. Now, this week was the first week where I started doing heavy singles as the top sets. If you recall, in the previous weeks, there've been sort of triples and things like that. So this week with squats, I worked up to 2 heavy singles, the first one being 265 kilos, and the second at 270. Now, this week, I had a couple of issues with my lower back. It was quite tight, causing a little bit of pain, a little bit abnormal. It's not something I normally experience during squatting. So after each set, I had to sort of stop and do some stretches with bands and things like that. I still got through the session, but it obviously wasn't as good as what it could have been. But I still managed to hit the numbers I needed to, which is important. And whilst they were hard, they weren't at a sort of 10 out of 10 level hard. So there's still, you know, I'm not too phased by it. I'm sure that next week will be better and we'll move on. So let's go and have a look at those couple of sets. And then these were followed by 2 sets of triples. The first one at 255 kilos. And then finished off with 225 for 3. Now this was also followed by my regular assistance work, including some upper back stuff and lunges. Now moving on to bench press. Before I get too in depth, let me go and get my whiteboard. So you may recall in some of the early episodes of the season when I talked about choosing numbers for my various lifts and which ones I was going to choose, and how on a couple of lifts I might choose a bit of a hybrid between some of the numbers. So this week was a great example of that, and it's something I've done for the last few weeks with bench press, where I've been using a hybrid of the 200 and 210 kilo program. Now if you have a quick look at week 7 for 200 kilos, it has 150, 160, 2 singles with 175, a 170 double, 150 triple. With the 210, it has 157.5, 167.5, 185, 185, 177.5, and 157.5 for a triple. Now, as each week has gone on, I've been unsure, exactly how my shoulders are going to cope with the workload and things like that, but they've been holding up pretty well. So this week I decided that 175 was probably going to be a little bit too easy. 185 was going to be probably too hard. So if we look down here at the actuals, I ended up going for top sets with 180 kilos for 2 singles. And this was preceded by 150 and 165, and followed by 170 by 4. Now you might ask, how come it's by 4, not by 2? The first couple of reps felt great, and I thought I could perhaps do a couple more and try for maybe a new 5 rep max. I know it's a little bit of Instagram hero status, but I fell a little bit short with 4 reps, and then a 155 for a triple to finish off. So you can see there that it's gone bang smack in the middle with those top singles. I've decided to stick with the 170 for the down set, and then gone in between again for that final set of 3. So let's have a look at those lifts. So as you can see, this week I unracked the weight a lot better as well. It felt much smoother, much more comfortable when I got it out of the rack and into my hands. And as you can see by those couple of top sets, it moved a lot better, and there was very little issues like I had in the last couple of weeks. So moving forward, it looks as though things are going to hold up pretty well for bench press, and I should be on track to hit a final single somewhere between those 2 numbers, I think. Okay, whiteboard's been put away for this week at least, and as always, bench press was followed by more assistance work for back, arms, and also shoulders. And last but not least, of course, is deadlift. Now, deadlift's been going quite well, as I've mentioned in the last few weeks. I've been pretty happy with it. At one stage it was probably my weakest lift. Now it's almost my strongest. So it's funny how some things can change when you change the, the effort that you put into them naturally. I mean, that's what you'd hope. But I guess the time off with the shoulder injury and things like that, which stopped me from benching and pressing a lot, made me go back and focus on deadlift and squats, and now deadlifts are finally sort of reaping that reward. So as per the rest of the program, I worked up to 2 sets of heavy singles, the first one being at 280 kilos. And then the second at 290. Now, when you watch the video, you'll see that I've switched to mixed grip, and I've gone bare hands. I've got rid of the straps, as I told you I would last week. And this is mainly because, as I said, we're getting into the heavy singles now, so it's time to get those hands conditioned, get the body used to pulling in that certain position. And it does take a little bit of getting used to, I found. The 280 felt pretty hard. The 290 was also, it's 290 kilos, so it's, we're getting towards the upper end of my lifting capabilities, I guess. But it didn't feel completely bad, but it just felt a little unusual, as you'd expect, after weeks of pulling the straps and switching back to bare hands. And this was followed by 275 kilos for a double and 240 for 3. Now, interesting, with this session, it was my 3rd session in a row. By that I mean that I trained Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday. Once again, because I had other commitments on Friday, which would have prevented me from working. I had to work about a 17-hour day across 2 jobs, and I only had about a bit over 2.5 hours downtime, I guess, in between those 2 jobs. So I wouldn't have had enough time to get home, do usual stuff, train and things like that. So I knew that if I let myself get into that position, I'd only set myself up for failure. So I got out there a day early, and I certainly felt the fatigue, I think perhaps from the heavy squats earlier in the week, and the set of 275 and the set of 240 both felt a lot harder than those weights have felt in the last few weeks. So, you know, that's the fun part about training, is experimenting and, you know, finding what works, finding what doesn't work. I've always trained deadlifts in a bit of a fatigue state, because I mean, on comp day you're never going to go in there fresh when it comes around to deadlifts, depending on how big the comp is, how hot it is. You know, I've felt stuff sometimes, and you're probably below your best by the time you get to deadlifts. So, you know, I don't mind training in a fatigue state, but this was probably a little bit too fatigued. So next week I'll try and spread that training up a little bit more, squat a little bit earlier in the week, and have more than you know, a day or so's gap between squats and deadlifts. That wraps up this week's training. I did have one question asking when I was going to switch into wraps for squats. Now, I know I've been putting it off, and at the start of the series I did say I was going to use wraps, but I've changed my mind. Surprise, surprise. I've always liked squatting in sleeves. I've enjoyed the simplicity of it. I train at home, I train by myself, so I don't have someone to wrap my knees, and I've tried wrapping in the last couple of weeks. I've struggled with it, but to be fair, I haven't put a lot of effort into it. I've kind of spat the dummy a little bit, and we all saw what that was like last week with watching Gwayne's squats. But I've decided that I feel like I've got a little bit of unfinished business squatting in sleeves. Now that may sound like, I don't know, bullshit trying to sell it to myself, and you know, if that's your opinion, then that's fine. But you know, I did have some goals for squatting in sleeves. I wasn't prepared to leave my best squat in sleeves at 302.5 kilos. I thought I could do better than that. I know I can do better than that, and I'm sure that I will do better than that. So ProRaw, I've got a couple of goals in mind. I'm still a few weeks off sort of feeling comfortable with sharing them, but depending how training goes, I will sort of in the next couple of weeks start talking about what I'm looking at perhaps opening at, and maybe seconds, and perhaps, you know, in a dream run what thirds will look like. So that's the hot news this week, is I've decided to stay in sleeves. Now, will I wear the sleeves I currently use? That's a good question, and probably not. I am looking at a couple of different options. I'm not the sleeves that I wear now are 9mm thickness, made by Harris. They aren't legal in regular federation comps. So ProRaw obviously isn't a proper powerlifting federation, I guess, like your GPCs, IPF, etc. So I can wear them in ProRaw, but outside of ProRaw I won't be able to. So it's probably not really worth getting too used to squatting in them, and I'd like to get into something that's legal and then be able to use them for further comps if I choose to. So thank you for watching. As always, you can catch me on Instagram at TheWhiteJuggernaut, and feel free to ask any questions you like, either on here, on Instagram. And thank you for everyone that's watched. Last week's episode was the best rating so far. It had a great response. Unfortunately, I can't include that stuff every week. You know, Gwayne and Luke can get your own show, but hey, it worked well. It was good for a laugh. And stay tuned, because I've got a couple of special episodes coming up along with my regular training updates. So thanks guys for watching, and as always, let's get out there, get in the gym, and let's get it done. Can you just hold that closer, so it's just pick up almost if you sit down and hold it. Please, just
over there.
Yeah. Actually, can you move it, come around?
Stop.
Yeah. Hey guys, hello and welcome to the Road to ProRaw 9, episode 6. My name is Ben Winstone. Thank you for joining me again. I always appreciate the feedback. Oh, fuck. I fucked that one up. Made my ProRaw debut by and I told you guys that I was going to choose a bit of a hybrid between some of the numbers of the PTC Triple P Pro. Perhaps of loosening up and getting some warm-ups done properly before the next week's set, and I should be right. Fuck, that sounds stupid.